Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Baba Kama Daf Daled. We're going to begin on the bottom of Gimel Medbeis, the second to last line. So we were discussing when it says the word shor in our Mishnah, is that referring to all matters of the shor, namely Karen, Shane, and Regel, and therefore the word Maveh is referring to Adam? Or is it possible that among the Arba Nezikin, Maveh is actually referring to the Shane? And when it says Shor in our Mishnah, it's referring to the horn. So then why does the Mishnah say that they have different characteristics when we're dealing with the tooth and we're dealing with the horn? V'hachi kamer, Lori HaKaren, the horn is not like the tooth, she'ein hanal hazikai, because there's no hana when it gores, as opposed to when it's eating with its teeth, it gets hana. Kureh hashein she'esh hanal hazika. When it comes to the tooth, it does get hana. So we continue to daled with aleph. V'orei hashein she'ein kavanas lahazik, kureh hakaren shekavanas lahazik. As opposed to when it comes to the Karen, it has intention to do damage. When it's doing eating food with its tooth, it's not intention is for damage to take place. It does cause you to lose your food, but they're doing it because it wants to eat. So they're not the same. So the Gemara asks, "V'lav kavul chaymer hu? V'charish mi kavul chaymer? Ma shein kavanas lahazik." When it comes to a tooth, in which it doesn't even have intention to do damage, nonetheless you're still chayiv. So Karen shekavanas lahazik ul kol shekain. Why does he even mention Karen? It should be obvious that since your kavan is to do damage, you're going to be chayiv. The itzrach. We still need Karen. You would think it would be applicable to the dinim of an eved and an amma. Eved v'amma lav avagav is not so. The kavanas lahazik, that they may have the intention to damage a fil hachi patiri, nonetheless you're pater. Hachanam lo shna, says Rashi. As we are going to see later on in Perka Chayvel, ha'eved v'ha'isha, when it comes to an eved or a woman, pigiyas and ra, encountering them is bad because ha'chayvel behen chayiv. If you hit them, you're chayiv. V'hein shechavu b'acher paturin. However, if they hit you, then you're pater. So we see that even though an eved hits and his intention is lahazik, nonetheless there's sometimes you can be pater. So maybe also when it comes to the Karen, you should be pater. Ravashi ought to what? Eved v'amal lav taimo rabbi ispahu. Isn't there a reason as to why they're not chayiv? Shema yak nitenu rabbi. So there could be a contentious relationship between the slave and the master, and if the slave knows that he can cause damage, and by causing damage it's going to cause his master to have to pay millions of dollars, he's going to end up raising havoc. So therefore, really you should be chayiv, but in order to deter an eved from using his ability to destroy things and make his master have to pay, so they would say, you know what, you're not going to have to pay there at all. Ela parachachi. Rather, you should ask like this: Lori hakaren shegavanas lahazik, that we cannot compare a horn where the kavan is to damage. Karen shein kavanas lahazik. Lori hashein shein hanal hazika. Karen shein hanal hazikai. So basically, we're basically saying the same thing. Varegel mai. So what are we saying? We're comparing the Shane, saying the Shane is not like the Karen. Varegel mai share. So what's the deal with the regel? It only talks about the Shane and the Karen. So on this, again, the idea is that, this is Rashi says, Karen lo having napik Shane mina. So the starting point is Karen and then Shane, not the other way around. Okay. So, but how about regel? Why is it left out? When it says the seifa lesui regel, it's including when an ox is damaged with its foot. So why is it mentioned regel explicitly, like the other two? Rather, it's not talking about Karen, but rather when it says shor, it's talking about the regel. When we're talking about mav, it's referring to the tooth. So it's not Karen in the tooth, but rather it's regel in the tooth. And we'll have to understand why does it not mention Karen. Okay. So now we can understand the mission like this. When it walks, that's its normal routine. By using its damage with the teeth, that's not as common. So why are you leaving out Karen? No, it's not, because she's a Chavamazik, Usui Karen, that safe of the Mishnah is including the horn. So v'lisni behedya, b'muwadin b'tchilasin kamairi, b'tamin v'say muwadin loy kamairi. So Karen is very different, because as we know, the first couple of times it damages, you only have to pay Chatzi Nezek because it's considered to be a tam, as opposed to Regel and Shane. Even the very first time it damages, the din is that you're Chayav Nezek Shalom. Question 12. Hashor b'borva mava of hever, ma'o shor ma'o mava ditnan hacha, umaskana. So we're saying shor and mava is referring to regel and shane. That's according to Rav Tana shor v'chol midi de shor, umava zeu adam. According to Shmuel, it's Tana shor v'lo umava l'shinai. Okay. Weiter. Ushmuel, my time lo Rav. So why doesn't he hold like the sheet of Rav? So Adam, if in fact our Mishnah is talking about one of the Arba Nezikin is Adam, Hakatani Seifa. It says in the Seifa, Shor Hamuid, if you have a wild ox, the Shor Hamazik Rishus Hanizik, or even ox that damages in the Nizik's property, and it already says Adam. It already says Adam. So it already says it. So, fine. So, Belisni Beresha, Beniski Mamin Kamari. So, Benisni Beresha, to Beniski Mamin Kamari, Beniski Gupoi Kamari. Our Mishnah only wants to talk about Niski Mamin, damage of your property, with your property, but not your body itself. Says Rashi, Shor Mazik Rishos Nizik, Kishanichnas or Shos Nizik. When the animal enters into the person's property, Benagach, Shameshar, and it gores, Afagav the Tamhu, even though it's the first time it gored, Misham Nezek Shalim. In that time, you still have to pay full damages right away. Ustamikut Rav Tarfin, Derma Kaman, he's going to say later on, Dav Tesvav, Mishuna Karen, Mishos and Nezek Shalim Mishalim. We do not make the distinction between Chatzi Nezek Shalim when the damage took place in Mishos and Nezek. Okay. Rav Nami Hakatani Adam B'Seifa. It also says Adam B'Seifa. So why is it in the Reisha? So Melech Rav Hahu Lo Mechshave Bahadi Muadin Hu Da'asa. The reason why it's mentioned here is just to include it among the other Muadin. It says actually Tani Chamisha Tam and Chamisha Muadin the Kashim of Azul. So really, our Mishnah does refer to Adam. However, over there it just needs to. It's based on a list, so it mentions that as among the lists that an Adam is muad right away. So my lo hare. So what does that mean according to him? So it means like this. Lo re hashor shemishalom as a kaifer. You can't compare the din of a shor. That if it kills a person, that the din is you have to pay kaifer. Kurei adam shemishalom as a kaifer. If a person kills another, you don't pay kaifer. However, when it comes to a person, you're chayav five things. Nezek, Sar, Shevas, Ripo, and Boishas. Mashenkin, when it comes to an animal, you're not chayav in those four of those five things. You're only chayav for Nezek, not for the other four. So Asad Shavash Mehem Shadach Hazik. However, they do have in common that they do damage. The Chishor Dark Hazik. What do you mean? An ox doesn't typically do damage. But muad, yeah, if it's a wild one. If a muad dark lahazik, is it really just because it's gored a few times we're going to say it's the way for it to damage? Yes. Kivan diayid, since it is a muad, Urchehu, this is its way. Adam darkul hazik. So why are you saying that a person, based on the Sefer of the Mishnah, is darkul hazik? Question 13. Ketzad talo rav sada shava ben nizik shdarkul hazik v'chi karen v'adam darkul hazik. So the answer is yes. By karen, it is because it's referring to a mu'id. And Adam, what is biyashin? Okay, if he's sleeping. So yashin darkul hazik, kivan dekayif upashit, since you're moving, stretching, and bending. Orchehu, it's the way that you can possibly do damage because you've not been paying any attention to yourself. Ushmirasan olecha, and you have an obligation to guard it. What does that mean? Adam shmiras gufo of who? You have to guard your body. It's not ushmirasan olecha. So latamecha detani karna arba avos nazikin. He learned that there's arba avos nazikin, but Adam echmehem, and Adam is one of them. Adam shmiras gufo of. It's not. It's your body who. It's ella kedi amrle Rabbi Hava tani Adam shmiras gufo olav. You should instead read that for Adam it's shmiras gufo olav. It's a shmir of this person's body is upon him. As we continue to Dalet and Beis, hachinami tani Adam shmiras gufo olav. Maskif lo Rav Mari ve'ema. Why do we say maveh zahamayim? Why are we saying that maveh is these other things? Maybe it's water. That if, let's say, a person pours water into the Rosh Hashanah and someone else comes and their kli breaks because of it, Yechayev. After all, the pasuk says, "Kikdayach eish hamasim," just the fire that burns, the thing that melts. Mayim tiva eish, water is going to bubble up due to the fire. So miksiv mayim nivu tiva eish ksiv. It says the fire boils the water. So it's not, the word shouldn't be for the water, but on the fire. So maskiv Rav Zvid ve'ema mavasa eish means fire. The chiksiv tiva b'eish u'dichsiv yihachi mahamave v'hever. We said hever is referring to fire. So if fire is hever, so how can mav also be fire? The chitema perushi kamafarish. Maybe one is explaining the other one. So yihacha arba shloshahav. It's not four, it's three. The chitema tana shor the east bay tarti. Shor has two, so maybe that's why it's four. Yihachi lo zev zeh sheish men ruachayim eish my ruachayim yisbei. How can you say that it has a ruachayim in it? If it's fire, fire doesn't have a ruachayim, but an ox does, and Adam does. Vesu ma'ikaharya eish. What do you mean it's like fire? It is fire, right? So obviously that's not what it's talking about. Tani Rabbi Yishia, shloisha aser avos nezikin. Incorrect. There are not arba avos nezikin. There's 13. And obviously we have the 4-hour Mishnah. We have a Shermechina Mashoyel Noisis Sachav Seicher, which we'll learn at greater length when we get to Hamafka, the third parak in Bava Metzia. So someone who is either a paid watchman or doesn't get paid, a shoyel and Noisis Sacher, a borrower, a renter, says Rashi. Shermechinam is chayav b'pshia. He's guarding it for free. He's only chayav if something negligent happens. But shoyel, on the other, a shoyel is the opposite. You're borrowing something you don't even pay, so you're chayav afil b'oinsin. So that is a huge distinction. A shermechinam, you're only chayav by pshia, and when it comes to a shoyel, a borrower, you're chayav even by an oinus. When it comes to a seicher and a nice sachar, you're chayav geneva vaved, if it got stolen or lost, and certainly b'pshia. There's no question you're chayav b'pshia. Okay. Which is discussed at greater length, and it's actually machlokis. It's not so pashut, but that's the piece that Rashi brings down to at least give us some perspective of these 4. But there's supposed to be 13, so let's keep going. Nezik sar v'ripoy shevasu boishas, which you already mentioned, these 5 damages. The nezek, if you damage a person, you have to give the value and how much he was, how much he is, how much he was. Sar, we evaluate how much a person would withstand having his hand cut off, or how much he would pay not to have his hand cut off, with some type of painless meds or without it. Ripoy Shevas and Boishas, all these things are went out in Perka Chayvel. And since they're written in Psukim over there, so that's why they're called Avos. So you have the Arba Shomer, you have the 5 damages, the 5 by Chayvel Chaver Chayv Devarim, you have 5 things. And then, of course, you have the Masnisin, the Arba the Masnisin, 4 of our Mishnah. Hatleyasa, so that's 13. So what Tandi Didan, my Talmud Loy Tandi Hachi, why does our Mishnah only mention 4, not 13? So Bishlam Shmuel ben Niski Mum and Kamari ben Niski Gufalo Kamari. He only wants to mention Niski Mumoin, like with an ox, which are things that you own, your property. He doesn't want to talk about damage of the body. So all these different things are damages of the body. However, El Rav listening, according to Rav, who says it's Adam, Mav is Adam, so then why is it included? So Tana Adam the Adam. It says Adam, and since it's Adam, it includes all the other things. It includes Nezek Sar, Ripoy, Shevas Boishes. It includes Shemechinim, Shemer Sachar, and a Shoyel, a nice Sachar. So it's already included in that word. Question 14. Madul Choshev Tandi Didan Sholosh Esrei Avos Nezikin. Why not? So either, according to Shmuel, because it doesn't mention the Lomari Ba'adam, the Hamazik Klal, or since it says L'Rav Hani Tisha the Rabbi Ishia B'Chlal Mavet the Tana, which again is referring to Adam. Okay. So Rabbi Ishia Nami Hatani Le Adam. He also mentions Adam. So Trey Gavni Adam. Tana Adam the Asik Adam. Tana Adam the Asik Shor. One is a person who damaged a person. One damages an ox. The Yachi Shor Nami Lisni Trey Gavni Shor. Was I mentioned 2 types of ox. Lisni Shor the Asik Shor. Lisni Shor the Asik Adam. An ox that damages an ox that damages a person. I want to do the same thing. No, hi mai. Bishlam Adam the Asik Shor. If a person, there's a chiluk. If he damages an ox, nezek the mishalim, all he pays is the damages. Adam the Asik Adam. If you damage a person, mishalim arba devarim, you have to pay the additional 4 things. So it makes sense to distinguish both of them, because there is a difference between an Adam damaging a person and an Adam damaging an animal. El Shor, Mali Shor the Asik Shor, Mali Shor the Asik Adam, Idi nezek the mishalim. An ox damaging an ox damaging a person, either way you pay nezek, and that's it. It mentions these 4, and it's referring to a person damaging an ox, and it's mentioned. So Tani Hazeka de Yadayim, Tani Hazeka de B'Meila. It mentions damage with your hands, and also one that just happens to be about, because again you were not watching it and the like. Okay. Fine. Tani Rav Chia. There's not 4 Avos Nezikin. There's not 13. Rather, Esrim Arba Avos Nezikin. There's 24. So we already know the 13. So what are the other 11? So Tashlumi Kefel. If Pasuk says Imatzi Tematzi Biyado Agneva, if you find the person who stole, let's say $100, he has to pay back double. But Tashlumi Arba B'Chamisha, by the din of Toiveh Chamoich, I'm not sure why Rashi has to tell us this, so you should know these things. That if you shecht or sell an animal that you stole, so you have to pay 4 or 5, whether it's a set or a shore. The ganav, when it comes to a ganav, that he pays, says Rashi, Shemishalam al pi atzmo, Mishalam kefel, he would not pay because he admits by himself, so he doesn't have to pay the kanas, because you don't. If you're moed b'kanas, you're potter. The gazlan, a gazlan also doesn't pay kefil. The edim zaymimin, plotting witnesses. Rashi doesn't tell us what that is. I guess that we know. The oinus mafate, a person oinus mafate. Rashi says they brought down the pasuk chamishim kesev ksiv oinus and mafate ksiv kesev yishka kamar b'sulois. So we have psukim, so they're avois. A moitzi shemra, in which it says the unsho isomea kesef, that there's a punishment of 100 kesef. Matame, someone who makes truma impure. Dameya, someone who mixes truma and chulin together. v'natsech. Says Rashi, Yayin Avodah Zarah, a person who makes wine designated for Avodah Zarah. Bahani Talyasni, the other 13, Horse and Rabbi 24. So Rabbi Yisha, not my time, Eloi Tani Hani. Why does he mention these 24? So B'moyne Kamayr, B'Kanasil Kamayr. You only know about Mum and not Kanas. So all these different cases which are linked to Kanas, so he doesn't mention those. 1 second. This list does not have only Kanas. Ganev Gazlan, the B'moynehu, listening. So Ganav and Gazlan, you don't pay kefil. There's no kanas. You pay mamoin. So hakatani leishem rechinam v'ashoyel. So he said we already learned by the din of a shem and of a shoyel. So what does that mean? It says Rashi, the hasam nami shayach keneva. Over there it's also shayach that it's stealing. Kigan shetan shenignav himenu. You claim it was stolen. V'arhi biyadai, and it's in your hands. So therefore, as we're going to see in Parak Meruba, the Toyin Tain is Ganav, Kiganav. That if you claim it was stolen, even though it wasn't, you really have it. So it's like you're a Ganav also. If a Toyin Tain is Gazlan, Kigazlan. So therefore, the fact that it says Shomer Chinim and Shoyel, that already kind of includes the others. So if that's true, Rabbi Chian Nami, Hatani Le Shomer Chinim Shoyel, so why does he mention Ganav and all this? Tani Mamoida Asli Yadi Bahater, but Tani Mamoida Asli Yadi Basura. There's a difference between the money that came to you by Isser, by stealing it, as opposed to you were the guard, and therefore you should have been protecting it, and then you decide to be Toin Tanis Ganav and keep it for yourself. Okay, we're going to stop here. Let's see, maybe a question. Question TA22. Hasada Shabbat Shebehem Shadark Lahazik. Eza Shar Dark Lahazik, Ve'eza Adam Dark Lahazik. So that is exactly the same question as we had over here, which was question 13. So if we're dealing with an ox, we're talking about a mu'id, and if we're dealing with a person, if he is sleeping. Okay. TB 23. Madul lo chashiv tani didan shlosh asar avos benezikin kravoishia shahaisiv umana dalid shaymer v'heichivi the chayvel. So why did he mention those? Why doesn't he mention those? This was over here. I guess we already had it. So this is what I wrote. Lamandi Omer Shahamav ze Adam Kvar Kosuv Adam Chol Midi de Adam L'chad Mandi Omer Yesh Hevdel Ben Niski Mamoin Ben Niske Gufoy Adkan.